Walk into any British pub today and half the taps are pouring beers that used to mean something. Brands that once represented quality, tradition, and proper brewing. But they've been gutted by corporate takeovers, cost-cutting, and recipe changes that turned classics into disappointments. We're counting down 15 British beers that broke our hearts, sold their souls, and now deserve nothing but your contempt. Some of these will genuinely hurt. Hansen was proper black country brewing, deeply rooted in Wolverhampton and Dudley, serving working men's clubs and local pubs across the Midlands with honest, unpretentious bitter. Then Wolverhampton and Dudley breweries, later Banks's, started swallowing up local breweries, rationalising production, closing historic sites, and turning distinctive regional beers into homogenised products brewed in massive facilities with no connection to their supposed heritage. Hansen's Mild was legendary in the Black Country, the beer that miners and factory workers drank after brutal shifts, but it got killed by corporate efficiency and the decline of mild as a category, leaving nothing but memories of what Black Country brewing used to represent. The Hansen name still appears occasionally, usually on keg fonts in Banks's owned pubs, but it's meaningless nostalgia bait with no substance behind it. The breweries are closed, the traditions are dead, the beers are either discontinued or so changed they're unrecognisable, and all that's left is corporate marketing, pretending that local heritage still matters while doing everything possible to destroy it. If you're drinking anything with the Hansen name now, you're drinking a ghost, a faint echo of Black Country, brewing that's been corporatised, homogenised, and stripped of everything that made it matter. The real Hansen died decades ago. What's left is just a brand name on a balance sheet. Banks's Bitter used to be Wolverhampton's beer, brewed locally, drunk locally, part of the social fabric of the Black Country in a way that went beyond just being a beverage. Then Marston's bought Banks's in 2007, and anyone familiar with Marston's modus operandi knew exactly what would happen. Production would be optimised, costs would be cut, the beer would be changed in subtle ways that destroyed its character, and the Banks's brewery in Wolverhampton would eventually close despite promises it wouldn't. Every single one of those predictions came true, and Banks's Bitter went from being proper regional bitter to just another mass-market ale, indistinguishable from the dozens of other forgotten brands in Marston's bloated portfolio. The closure of the Wolverhampton brewery in 2022 was the final insult. Banks's was literally the Banks's brewery, the clue was in the name, and Marston's closed it anyway because maintaining local brewing heritage doesn't show up on quarterly earnings reports. What's sold as Banks's now is brewed in Burton-on-Trent, in facilities that have no connection to Wolverhampton, no understanding of Black Country culture, no respect for what Banks's represented. If you're drinking Banks's Bitter thinking you're supporting local brewing or maintaining tradition, you're doing neither. You're just giving money to a corporate conglomerate that destroyed everything you claim to value. The real Banks's is dead, and pretending otherwise is just sad. Wainwright was another Thwaites brand, launched in 2006 to capitalise on the golden ale trend, named after legendary fellwalker Alfred Wainwright to give it Lake District authenticity and heritage appeal. For a few years it actually worked. Wainwright was genuinely decent golden ale, widely available, reasonably priced, something you could order without embarrassment. Then Marston's bought it along with the rest of Thwaites' brands, and Wainwright followed the same depressing trajectory as everything else they touch. Slow decline, recipe changes, cost-cutting, and transformation from decent regional ale into just another generic product, brewed for maximum profit and minimum quality. The tragedy is that Wainwright trades heavily on Lake District imagery and Alfred Wainwright's legacy, while having absolutely nothing to do with either anymore. It's not brewed anywhere near the lakes. It's not made with any particular care or craftsmanship. It's just industrial beer with nice marketing and nostalgic branding. Alfred Wainwright spent his life celebrating authenticity, local character, and genuine connection to place. Everything that Wainwright's golden beer has abandoned in pursuit of volume and profit. If you're drinking Wainwright thinking you're honouring fell-walking heritage or supporting Lake District brewing, you're doing neither. You're just giving money to Marston's while they exploit nostalgia for something they've systematically destroyed. The beer's not terrible, which somehow makes it worse. It's just mediocre enough to keep selling, without being good enough to actually respect the name it bears. Boddingtons was Manchester's great brewing export, the cream of Manchester, with that distinctive creamy head from the nitrogen widget, and for a brief period in the 90s, it was everywhere and genuinely popular. But Boddingtons is the textbook example of how corporate brewing destroys everything it touches. Whitbread bought the brewery, closed it down, moved production to massive industrial facilities, changed the recipe, and turned what used to be proper Manchester bitter into just another smooth nitro keg beer indistinguishable from John Smith's or any other mass-market widget ale. The advertising stayed clever. Those black and white ads were genuinely funny. But the beer became progressively worse until even the marketing couldn't hide the disappointment. Now Boddingtons barely exists, except in a few supermarkets, and the occasional pub that hasn't bothered updating its beer selection since 1998. The cream of Manchester became the corpse of Manchester, a zombie brand shambling on through inertia and residual brand recognition, while having absolutely nothing to recommend it. If you're drinking Boddingtons now, you're either doing it ironically or you've genuinely forgotten what good bitter tastes like. The Manchester brewing heritage that Boddingtons represented, proper cask ale, local pride, regional distinctiveness, is completely gone, replaced by corporate blandness, brewed nowhere near Manchester by people who've never set foot in the city. It's not just bad beer, it's a betrayal of everything it once stood for. McEwan's Champion is Export's weaker sibling, suffering from exactly the same corporate gutting, but without even the historical prestige to fall back on. It was always the budget option, the everyday drinker, the beer for blokes who wanted McEwan's but couldn't quite stretch to export prices. And even when it was brewed properly in Edinburgh, it was nothing special. Now that Heineken's closed the brewery and moved production to massive industrial facilities in England, Champion has gone from mediocre to actively bad, thin, metallic, with that distinctive cheap lager taste that comes from brewing beer as quickly and cheaply as possible, with no regard for quality or character. Champion still exists in Scottish pubs and supermarkets purely through inertia and residual brand loyalty from blokes who've been drinking it for 40 years and can't quite bring themselves to stop, even though they know deep down it's not the beer it used to be. The tragedy is that Scotland has brilliant breweries making genuinely excellent lager, Brewdog for all their corporate sins, Williams Brothers, Innis Gunn despite their issues, but Champion trades on being traditional, while having none of the quality that tradition should represent. If you're still drinking McEwan's Champion in 2025, you're drinking out of habit, rather than enjoyment, loyalty, rather than taste, and it's time to admit that the beer you loved is gone, and what's replaced it isn't worth your time or money. McEwan's Export used to be Scotland's premium lager, brewed in Edinburgh, drunk by blokes who wanted something stronger and more interesting than standard lager, but weren't ready for heavy Scottish ales. At 4.5%, it was positioned as premium and special, something for Friday nights and celebrations rather than everyday drinking, and the marketing made it feel sophisticated and desirable. Then Heineken bought the brewery, closed it down, moved production to England, and systematically destroyed everything that made export worth drinking. The strength dropped, the recipe changed, the quality collapsed, and what's left is just another forgettable lager, trading on Scottish heritage it no longer has any right to claim. The real insult is that McEwan's Export still pretends to be Scottish, still uses the tartan imagery and Scottish branding, while being brewed in Manchester by a Dutch multinational that views it as just another SKU in a massive portfolio. It's not premium, it's not special, it's not even particularly Scottish anymore. It's just cheap lager with above average alcohol content sold to people who either don't know better or don't care. If you're drinking Export thinking you're getting genuine Scottish brewing heritage, you're drinking a lie wrapped in tartan. The Edinburgh brewery is closed, the tradition is dead, and all that's left is corporate exploitation of nostalgia for something that no longer exists. If you're getting angry because we've just destroyed something you've been drinking for 20 years, or if you're nodding along because you've thought this for ages but never said it out loud, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling us which beer we got wrong, and subscribe because we've got 9 more disappointments to expose. Trust me, the next ones will hurt even more. Belhaven Best used to be Scotland's answer to proper English bitter. Brewed in Dunbar since 1719, genuinely Scottish, genuinely decent beer that locals drank with pride, and visitors discovered with pleasure. Then Greene King bought them in 2005, and anyone familiar with Greene King's track record knew exactly what would happen next. The beer didn't change immediately. Corporate takeovers never do it right away. But slowly, gradually, the quality slipped. The consistency wavered, and what used to be reliably good became occasionally decent at best. Greene King has formed for buying respected regional breweries and slowly strangling them with cost-cutting and efficiency improvements, and Belhaven followed that familiar depressing pattern. The tragedy is that Belhaven still exists, still claims Scottish heritage, still has that historical brewery in Dunbar, but the soul's been corporatised out of it. Walk into a Scottish pub and order Belhaven Best and you'll get something drinkable, sometimes even pleasant, but it's not what it was. The edges have been smoothed off, the character's been diluted, the distinctiveness that made it Belhaven rather than just another bitter has faded into corporate blandness. If you remember Belhaven from before the Greene King era, trying it now feels like meeting an old friend who's had a personality transplant. Technically the same person, but everything that mattered has been lost. Innis Gunn launched in 2003 with an interesting gimmick. Beer aged in oak barrels that previously held whiskey, and for a while, it was genuinely novel and reasonably good. But somewhere along the way, Innis Gunn stopped being a craft brewery, making interesting beer, and became a marketing operation that happens to sell beer. The original barrel-aged beers got joined by endless variations, limited editions, and special releases, each one more gimmicky than the last, and the quality became wildly inconsistent. What used to feel like genuine innovation now feels like desperate attention-seeking, churning out new products to chase trends rather than perfecting the beers that made them famous. The bigger problem is that Innis and Gunn positioned themselves as premium craft beer while brewing on a massive scale and distributing everywhere, trying to have it both ways. Craft credibility with corporate reach. The beer itself isn't terrible, but it's overpriced for what it is, trading on that barrel-aged story, while the actual liquid in the bottle has become increasingly ordinary. If you're paying premium prices for Innis & Gunn thinking you're getting craft quality, you're paying for marketing and packaging, not brewing excellence. There are dozens of Scottish breweries making genuinely interesting beer without the gimmicks, and they deserve the money more than this corporate craft hybrid that can't decide what it wants to be. Lancaster Bomber launched with such promise. Proper Lancaster heritage, brewed by Thwaites, positioned as premium ale. For blokes who wanted something better than standard bitter. The name referenced Lancaster's aviation history, the packaging looked smart, and for a while it felt like genuine quality, brewing from a respected regional brewery. Then Marston's bought Thwaites' beer brands in 2015, and Lancaster Bomber became another victim of corporate acquisition and inevitable quality decline. The beer's still around, still in pubs and supermarkets, but it's lost whatever character it once had and become just another forgettable amber ale in Marston's endless lineup of mediocrity. The problem with Lancaster Bomber is that it represents wasted potential. It could have been Lancashire's answer to Timothy Taylor's Landlord, or Fuller's London Pride, a regional beer that achieved national respect while maintaining quality and distinctiveness. Instead, it became just another brand asset, brewed for volume rather than excellence, marketed on heritage while abandoning the values that heritage supposedly represented. If you're drinking Lancaster Bomber thinking you're getting proper Lancashire brewing, you're getting brewing that happens to be done in Lancashire by a massive corporation that views it as just another product line. The name still resonates, the branding still looks decent, but the beer itself is disappointingly ordinary. And in British brewing, ordinary is worse than outright bad because it represents surrender rather than failure. Old Crafty Hen launched in 2000 as Greene King's attempt at a premium strong ale, and for a brief moment, it was actually interesting. 6.5%, rich and complex, something different from the usual lineup. But Greene King has never met a good beer they couldn't make mediocre through cost-cutting and recipe changes, and Old Crafty Hen fell victim to exactly that corporate mentality. The strength dropped, the complexity disappeared, and what's left is just another forgettable strong ale, with a quirky name and absolutely nothing to back it up. The problem with old Crafty Hen is that it's trying to be clever and premium, while being brewed by people who fundamentally don't care about brewing good beer. They care about shifting volume and maximising profit margins. It's too strong to be a session beer, not interesting enough to be a special occasion drink, and stuck in that no man's land where nothing works properly. The name suggests character and eccentricity, but the beer itself is as characterful as beige wallpaper in a travelodge. If you're drinking old Crafty Hen, you've either got no other options, or you've stopped paying attention to what you're putting in your mouth. Harp lager was everywhere in the 70s and 80s. Every pub in Northern Ireland, plenty in England, marketed as premium Irish lager with a distinctive Harp symbol on the pump. But Harp was never actually good. It was just well marketed, well distributed, and well positioned to catch blokes who wanted lager but didn't know any better. Guinness owned it, which gave it credibility by association, but the beer itself was thin, watery, and utterly forgettable even when it was at its peak. Now it's basically disappeared from most of Britain, relegated to the occasional pub that hasn't updated its offerings since 1985, and nobody misses it because there was never anything to miss. The few places still serving Harp are doing it out of inertia rather than quality. The beer's been sitting in those lines for months, the pump's still there because removing it costs money, and the occasional punter orders it out of misguided nostalgia for something that was never worth being nostalgic about. Harp represents everything wrong with 70s and 80s lager culture. Style over substance, marketing over quality, image over taste. If you're still drinking Harp in 2025, you're either trapped in a time warp, or you've genuinely given up on enjoying what you drink. Either way, it's time to move on to literally anything else. Hall & Woodhouse's Badger beers used to represent proper Dorset brewing: Tanglefoot, Golden Champion, First Gold. Distinctive ales with character and quality that felt authentically local and genuinely crafted. Then Marston's bought them in 2023, and anyone who knows British brewing history knows exactly what happens when Marston's gets hold of a decent regional brewery. The beers haven't been officially changed yet, but the writing's on the wall. Production will be rationalised, recipes will be optimised, costs will be cut, and everything that made Badger special will be sacrificed on the altar of efficiency and shareholder value. Even before Marston's involvement, Badger had started slipping. The beers weren't quite as good as they used to be, the quality wasn't as consistent, the magic was fading. But at least they were still independent, still trying, still Dorset. Now they're just another brand in a massive portfolio, waiting to be homogenised and neutered like everything else Marston's touches. If you loved Badger beers 10 or 15 years ago, drink them now, while they still resemble what they once were, because in 2 years they'll be unrecognisable. Corporate brewing takeovers always follow the same script, and this one will end the same way all the others have, in disappointment and regret. Marston's itself, the flagship bitter from Burton-on-Trent, brewed using those famous Burton Union oak barrels that give it distinctive character and connect it to centuries of brewing heritage. Except Marston's the company has spent the last 20 years buying up respected regional breweries and destroying them through cost-cutting and rationalisation, turning proud local brands into homogenised corporate products while pretending to care about tradition and heritage. Banks's, Jennings, Witchwood, Ringwood, Thwaites' brands, all bought by Marston's, all diminished, all casualties of corporate brewing's insatiable appetite for consolidation and efficiency. The bitter irony is that Marston's pedigree could be genuinely world-class. When it's brewed properly using the Burton Union system and served in perfect condition, it's stunning. But Marston's the company cares more about quarterly profits than brewing excellence, more about market share than quality, more about brand portfolios than actually making good beer. They've closed historic breweries, fired experienced brewers, cut corners on ingredients and processes, and turned British brewing consolidation into a case study in how to destroy everything that makes regional brewing valuable. If you're drinking Marston's products now, you're supporting the company most responsible for homogenising British beer and killing local brewing heritage. They're not the only corporate villain in British brewing. but they're perhaps the most hypocritical, claiming to value tradition while systematically destroying it, positioning themselves as guardians of British brewing heritage while being its greatest threat. Marston's represents everything wrong with modern British brewing, and every pint you buy from them funds the destruction of everything that makes British beer worth caring about. Doombar used to be Cornwall's pride, a proper amber ale brewed in rock, something locals drank with genuine affection and visitors discovered with delight. Then Molson Coors bought Sharp's brewery in 2011, and everything changed. They moved production out of Cornwall to Burton-on-Trent, scaled up the volume, and somewhere in that process, the soul disappeared entirely. What used to be a distinctive Cornish bitter with character and depth became just another mass-market ale, bland and inoffensive, designed to appeal to everyone and excite no one. The tragedy is that Doombar is now everywhere. Every pub, every supermarket, every festival. But ubiquity killed what made it special. It's beer for people who don't really care what they're drinking, served in pubs that don't really care what they're serving, and the fact that it still trades on its Cornish heritage while being brewed hundreds of miles away in an industrial facility is borderline dishonest. If you remember Doombar from before the buyout, trying it now will just make you sad. It's like visiting a childhood home that's been converted into flats. The building's still there, but everything that mattered is gone. John Smith's used to be proper Yorkshire bitter, cask-conditioned, characterful, brewed with pride in Tadcaster by people who understood what beer should taste like. Then the big brewers got involved, turned it into keg beer, added that bloody widget to make it smooth, and destroyed everything that made it Yorkshire bitter in the first place. The ads with Peter Kay were brilliant, absolutely top-tier British comedy. But the beer itself became the definition of bland, safe, mass-market nothing. It's smooth at the expense of flavour, consistent at the expense of character, and widely available at the expense of being worth drinking. Walk into any working men's club or cheap pub, and John Smith's will be on tap, not because it's good, but because it's cheap, familiar, and inoffensive. Blokes drink it because it's what they've always drunk, because change is difficult, because admitting you've wasted decades drinking mediocre beer is too depressing to contemplate. The real John Smith's, the cask version that still exists in a handful of proper Yorkshire pubs, is actually decent, proving the recipe isn't fundamentally broken. But the smooth keg version that's everywhere else is just corporate brewing at its most cynical. Take something with heritage and authenticity, strip out everything interesting, add nitrogen, market it relentlessly, and watch the money roll in while quality drinkers weep into their pints. 15 beers that used to mean something, 15 brands that sold their heritage for corporate profit, 15 disappointments that proved British brewing's biggest threat isn't foreign lagers or craft beer trends. It's the big brewers destroying regional quality from within. Hit subscribe and watch the next video where we celebrate the British beers still worth drinking. Cheers.